There's a common misconception about Gears of War. From the outside looking in, it's just a chest-bumping, testosterone-fueled cover shooter. Every fight is up close and personal. Ripping and tearing is all but discouraged given the many opportunities to do so. Brand new weapons bring exotic ways to kill. With every gunfight branching off into a mix of explosions and charred bodies, it's almost impossible to see the war as anything other than savage. Although many iconic moments are barbarous, peeling a layer back reveals the sensitivity and humanity in what we know as Gears of War. The first installment to the series introduced us to Sarah, a world parallel to what we know as Earth, all with its own history and geography. After nearly a century of war, an unknown force bursts from the depths and pushes humanity to their breaking point, which causes desperate measures to be taken. Cities were left vacant or in disarray. Enemies could push in from any which way, whether it be from the ground or the sky. Nowhere was safe. The world was grim. The only way to survive was to push forward. The game was drowned in cold, dystopian gray to match the events taking place. Guns are fired with accompanied cracking and popping. The heavy thumps of your armor slamming against a piece of cover makes you feel grounded and ready for the fight. The story follows Delta Squad on their mission to plant a resonator deep inside the enemy stronghold to map out the tunnel for the lightmass bomb. In that time, you're sent to explore the world around you, and the events that transpire are burned into your memory for better or for worse. While the day brings about chaotic battlefields, the night brings about a more unique evil. Everything is slower and seemingly more peaceful, but that's when it gets you. A misstep, a shattered light, a strong enough wind to put out your fire. Krill are nocturnal flying creatures that tear apart prey akin to piranhas. Since they're opposed to light, that's realistically your only weapon against them. They're too agile to hit with anything else. Due to that, the night is a wall between you and your goal. The cover of buildings is an ideal way of getting around during the nighttime. Now, while Gears of War isn't a horror game, it would be a disservice to claim that it lacks any horror elements. Nighttime forces battles to be more sporadic, which in turn gives you a lot more downtime to be with your surroundings. The music becomes a lot more atmospheric and gets in your head as your footsteps echo down a hallway. Anything could be lurking around the corner. If a single light flickers and dims, you're as good as dead. This is how Gears of War started, as a third-person cover shooter with a pretty simple story and some horror elements, but over time, media matures and grows with the audience, leading to a narrative with more nuance and emotion. Gears of War is no exception.
I mean, there's still a fair amount of jock, frat boy, macho bullshit in the game, I'm not going to lie, but at the same time, you know, there's a little bit more personal elements in there. There's, you know, some of the themes in the game as far as loss and retribution and the sadness of war. I think they're coming through a lot more in this game, more so than they did in the first.
It's known, even by the developers, that the story of Gears of War 1 wasn't very ambitious. The story starts, there's a goal, you fight towards that goal, a few blockades appear, and the story concludes. That may be looking at the narrative a bit too simplistically, but that doesn't mean that the narrative is bad in any way. The narrative just lacked depth. Gears of War 2 would go on to up the ante in every category Epic Games could think of. They aimed to make the sequel bigger, badder, and more explosive. Ironically, they also wanted to make the narrative more personal and character-driven. With the games becoming increasingly more over the top, the environmental horror seen in the first game would have to go. The fears of yesteryear would be soon forgotten and replaced with more heart-to-heart dialogue and banter, further adding to the love for these characters we're fighting alongside.
This one guy in Basic, he thought they were from Risea or one of the moons, and that they feed on emulsion.
Hey Marcus, you ever seen them eating emulsion?
They can eat shit and die for all I care.
Shades were recalibrated, which led to a less creepy feel, and the narrative would revolve around an ongoing battle rather than a reconnaissance mission. Any downtime that was taken was during a push to the next fight. The Krill from the original were no more, which meant that the fights could go on indefinitely. A large chunk of the game takes place deep under the crust within the Hollow. Along with Gears of War 2 introducing many new aspects through the intricate cave system, its inclusion is analogous to the new direction Epic was taking with the narrative.
We set it up as far as who these guys were, what this universe really was. We established it, and now we're really kind of able to explore and kind of, you know, have their own story arcs and see where it goes. And it's a little dark. Yeah.
Dominic Santiago opens the door to a brand new narrative structure to the series that would set a precedent for the series moving forward. There's an emotional disconnect during gameplay since you're encouraged to crush the skulls of your enemies. There's a tendency to forget that each fight is personal, behind every gear is a story, and that's especially true for Dom. A simple family man turned war hero to protect his wife and chosen brother Marcus. With his wife missing during this ongoing war, Dom can't seem to keep his mind on the battle at hand. Between downtime and cutscenes, we're shown Dom's frustrations concerning Maria. One of the many inhumane actions of the Locust is taking prisoners of war and sending them to their breaking point. We see the best case scenario through the rescuing of Baird. He's relatively unharmed and was saved just in the nick of time. We also see the worst case scenario on Ty. The character portrayed to be the prime example of mental fortitude. He was put through incomprehensible pain for hours on end and took his own life when given the chance. As heartbreaking as it is to the rest of Delta Squad, it's reality shattering for Dom. If the Locust could break the unbreakable, how would Maria stand a chance against any of this? Once Marcus and Dom reach the highway to Nexus, they come to a standstill. They're so close to their mission objective that they can almost taste it. The next step for mankind is right around the corner, yet Dom is ready to throw the world away for a chance to find his wife. Though initially defiant, Marcus gives in and joins the search. Upon opening the cage, the music is angelic and the color gradient gets warm. We see through Dom's perspective what he was hoping for, but as the camera pans and the music swells, reality snaps back into place. The entire scene leading up to her death has Dom apologizing and looking back to Marcus for help. His whole reason for fighting this war is right in front of him, unresponsive. In the end, he chooses to take her life. After killing Maria, he's no longer fighting to find her, instead he's fighting for her. Since Gears of War 2, this has been the duality of the characters. They'll always be ravenous enough to tear through an enemy, but passionate enough to let their thoughts and feelings shine through. The idea of Gears of War shifted from a series of horror and misery to a balancing act of loss and hope. Balancing those two can be a real challenge because many things have to be taken into account in order to make everything feel as if it has weight behind it. This narrative style was used for years to come, and with the universe being expanded upon through different pieces of media such as novels and comics, characters and events were getting fleshed out more than ever. But unfortunately, our environmental horror was entirely lost by this point.
So that actually brings me to a question I wanted to ask, which is that there's this sort of very prevalent internet meme, obviously, that Gears is the bro shooter.
Why that comes through, why there's this perception, I'm not sure. And if I can get a handle on it, you know, it's one of those things we'll continue to massage away from because it's something that people use to dismiss an entire franchise. It's like, you know, have you played Gears? Nah, I don't. It's a big bro, big guy game, not my thing.
With the release of Gears of War 3, the series was more action-heavy and character-centric than it has been in previous iterations. Delta Squad grew into great numbers to the point where the game had to consistently split the squad into two groups. By this point, the series has little to no semblance of the original tone. You make your way from region to region with the sun beating down on you, and the only time you experience nightfall is during the large-scale fight at Anvil Gate. The Lambent are a lot more deadly than the Locust and have nearly infinite numbers, and the effects were evolving. It's no longer just wretches and drones, it's moved on to leviathans, berserkers, and even humans. The threat of the Lambent was now surpassing that of the Locust, and the luxury of downtime for horror is no longer existent, since the Lambent can show up anywhere and break through defenses head first. Without focusing on the horror atmosphere, there's more time for drama, more banter, more time for characters to feel a lot more human with a large range of emotions. This doesn't mean the intent for a deeper story came out of nowhere though. Gears of War is a story of sacrifice. The third installment hammers home the themes by adding the beginning dream sequence, Dom's death, and most importantly, Adam Phoenix's death. Sacrifice can be seen throughout the entirety of the series, from the sinking of Jacinto to Prescott calling in the hammer strikes. But what was the first sacrifice in the series? Jacinto Maximum Security Prison, the Slab. A foul prison with a life expectancy not even surpassing a year. The worst of the worst reside here, and for multiple years Marcus survived, away from the Locust, but also away from Dom and Anya. He was court-martialed for failing to obey orders, attacking Colonel Hoffman, and playing a prominent role in the fall of Afira. Risking a death sentence, Marcus sacrifices himself to save his father, which he fails to do as we see in Gears of War 3's opening chapter. What are you willing to sacrifice? Can you live with your decisions? The nature of everything Gears up to this point paints a narrative of hope, loss, and brotherhood. From the beginning, the road was paved for themes to come naturally over time. Every comic, every novel, every game built up what we think of the series years later. We remember the banter between brothers, the sacrifices they made for one another, the odds they overcame for the sake of themselves and humanity. But we also see how easily some of them are willing to throw away the planet itself for their own personal gain or pure arrogance. The year is 2015. The Gears of War storyline has been concluded for quite some time, but that doesn't mean it's over. Enveloped by a blanket of moonlight, our two characters are pushing through a ghost town with nothing but the crunches under their boots and a howling wind to keep them company. With a screech, their focus shoots to a shadow atop a building. As they take notice, the winds become hostile, winds so aggressive that the surrounding architecture begins to crumble. They proceed forward through a stable building to wait out the storm. Illuminated by a lantern's flashlight is a vacant room in disarray. Exploring the rooms, it's discovered that the house has an infestation of sorts. Peering into the glowing unknown, our protagonist is painted with a vibrant slime, which causes a shortage to his flashlight. A fungal-like growth stretches across the floor, leading our heroes further through the building. As they approach the exit, their target scurries past, causing them to follow in its tracks. Sprawling across their pathway are more fungal-like tendrils connected to pods, which are housing something one can only imagine. The fungus crowds the streets of the vacant town like a sprawling "Do Not Enter" sign. Reaching the end of the claustrophobic alleyway opens up to a courtyard, surprising our heroes with a proper greeting to what they've been chasing all night.
Gears 1 was really the best example of what we wanted to go for in terms of tone, right? It was really more about tension and a little bit more survival horror.
By taking the story back to being a very personal story about these three people in the woods at one night, we're able to get back to that moment where you can feel scared and you can be having the discovery of what's out there and I don't know what's going bump in the woods.
The brand new installment seems to be going back to its roots, and the community is excited, and rightfully so. After a decade, Gears is now pushing back to its horror feel with a new generation of monsters and COG alike. Some time passes before we get more trailers advertising the game, building up the hype and hammering home the idea that this new game will focus on family and what you're willing to do for it. After months of anticipation, Gears of War 4 is finally released, and the fans' disappointment is immeasurable. The promised family-oriented environmental horror Gears of War fell flat due to a myriad of issues which accumulated in the narrative with loose themes and a seemingly pointless story. 25 years after Victory Day, society is rebuilt and pushes further into tech than ever before. The new COG is opting for a variety of robots to police and construct new upcoming settlements. While there has been civil unrest, outright war is something that the new generation has yet to face. So when war knocks on your front door, what exactly do you do? James Dominic Phoenix decides to reunite with his father to ask for help. The group bands together, arms themselves, then sets foot towards a locust burial site. Shortly after entering enemy territory, Marcus is captured and our new heroes are deep past enemy lines without any guide or assistance. All the stars aligned for this to happen. Now, after hours of fighting off hordes of DBs, the group has to face a nightmare reborn. But something feels off. The game takes this moment, a moment of desperation and fear, and uses it as another action sequence. There's long drawn out hallways and vacant rooms just like in Gears of War 1, but there's a huge difference between the two. The original Gears of War had two different styles of music. The primary one we want to focus on is the Haunting Unknowns style. It's an ambient sounding tone that sets the scene for you and puts you into the shoes of somebody who's in a place they're not supposed to be in. Not only are you in enemy territory, but you're in the dead of night when the krill come out. The tone of the music matched the scenery and the scenario. Compare that to Gears of War 4 in the same setting, behind enemy lines in the dead of night, and the music ramps up with every interaction and dies down when all the enemies are taken out. This completely changes the tone of the setting and adds more of a machismo to the scenes instead of a vulnerability. Even the smallest battles have action music behind them. Another comparison that can be made is the use of dialogue during these moments. Gears of War 1 had very minimal dialogue during these moments unless callouts were needed or they needed to communicate through their comms. When they did speak, it was kept to a whisper.
Baird, give me an update.
We've got locusts, and looks like krill are on their way.
Can you hold position?
For now, but you guys are welcome to come back. Anytime, you know?
Copy that. Phoenix out.
From time to time there was banter in these moments, but the banter would never take away from the situation at hand. Gears of War 4, on the other hand, will have a good amount of normal volume speaking during these moments. The dialogue asks questions that both the players and characters have, but the normal speaking volume opposes what their words entail. On top of that, their comments cross the line of banter and move into the realm of childlike. Up to this point in the game, we've already gotten a grasp of these characters. A bit of silence in these tense moments would be great to ground the characters a bit more. In the same vein, the family-oriented themes seen in the trailers also fall short. The story revolves around the Phoenix and Diaz family bond. JD and Kate are on opposite sides of family relations, where JD, just like Marcus, is very distant from his father, while Kate has a really deep bond with her mother. Both parents encourage character growth throughout the story, while the new characters are built up as individuals through their struggles. Despite its hiccups, the narrative written for these characters is a decent starting point for our new cast, all up until the last cutscene. Upon entering the room, the group is in disbelief as they find Reyna connected to the hive by an intricate system of tendrils. With a shaky breath, she asks Kate to cut her loose, as doing so will kill her and put a pause to the plans of the swarm. The group leaves Kate alone with her mother to shed their final moments in gut-wrenching silence. With an ancestral amulet given and a kiss on a cheek, Kate proceeds with the necessary and severs the connection between Reyna and the hive. After some time, Kate leaves the hive for consolation and takes one last look at her amulet.
If it's when we look at characters and story and how we develop them to make sure that, you know, even if they're new and they're different, we're still exploring things that are true to sort of that Gears of War storyline, that idea of camaraderie and brotherhood, and exploring you know, loyalty and family ties in times of trouble.
Gears of War 4 doesn't lead to an overarching story about family. It leads to a story about lineage. The sequel is a story solely about Kate and her connection to the Locust. It starts off with a JD and Marcus storyline before abruptly giving a time skip, then setting the focus on Kate for the rest of the game. In this story, Kate's relationship with Reyna doesn't matter anymore. Narratively, Reyna was only a connection between Mira and Kate. The original trilogy followed a coalition looking for hope in a hopeless world. The start of this new generation showed us the importance of family and trust. Gears 5 is simply a story about Kate. While the story's quality is up to one's own opinion, it should be common ground that this isn't the Gears of War we know. Despite featuring former Delta Squad members, iconic series weapons, and enemies resembling the Locust, it lacks any bit of horror, sacrifice, or loneliness. It's not a war for the sake of humanity, it's simply just a war against monsters. Originally, Gears of War was compelling due to its up-close and personal action, blissfully complemented by an environmental horror feel. Over the years, the series began to lose its horror elements but replaced them with sensitive, more human elements on top of adding more high-octane action. And truthfully, that was Gears of War. A group effort in a search for a tomorrow in a grim world. There were personal motives, as with every war, but those personal motives were not in direct connection with the Locust. For all intents and purposes, Kate is a Locust Queen, and with that revelation, the story revolves around her and her struggle with cutting that connection. It feels more like a sci-fi coming-of-age story than the grim dark-esque feel the game used to have. This new story arc Gears of War is going through is struggling to gather its footing. Going through the effort of swapping main characters halfway through and struggling to stick with its own themes and tone, the series has been iffy for the past couple of installments. Let's hope Gears of War can find its footing and rediscover its own identity. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. This video took a lot of time and effort and research to make, so I'm hoping you guys really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed making it. I hope I can continue to make content like this in the future if you guys are so willing to watch. If you're not subscribed yet, feel free to do so. I got some more Gears videos along the way. So many scripts in my vault right now, and they're all waiting to be finished.